Hello and welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Nathan and I's presentation on Biblical Tragic Heroes. Part 4, David.
Who's David?
So he is a hero, and he becomes king despite the opposition. From his early life to his final days, he had many enemies and was constantly challenged. But did he preserve these values when he was king?
Alright, so David was born as a poor shepherd from the tribe of Judah. Basically, Israel had 12 tribes. Judah was one of the bigger and better tribes, but he was still like one of the poorest members in there. He was the youngest child, and he was the least respected of his family. So David was anointed king at around 10 years old. So David again was a shepherd, and it was a very dangerous job. He was able to do it, which already proved his worth. And then so Samuel comes, and he doesn't know who he's about to anoint. And then so he goes to all the sons of his father. His father's name is Jesse. And then so he looks, oh, this guy is big and strong. He's got to be the one. But he was not the one. And so he goes through 9 more sons. Then he comes to the smallest one, David. And then he's like, this one is going to be the king. All his brothers laugh at him because they don't think that he has it in him. But eventually, David is blessed because he's the one who's supposed to become the next king, and he becomes the harpist in Saul's court. And that's when he kills Goliath, becomes a hero. And then David exposes Saul's wrath, and he's hunted because Saul wants to get rid of him. And one thing that happens is David is chased into a place called Adullam Cave, and he's there for a very long time. And what happens is there's a book in the Bible called Psalms, which is a collection of songs and poems. He wrote a lot of them there. He's asking God for help in this fight because he doesn't want to lose his life. You can read the words that he wrote. But eventually, Saul dies. His heir Ishbosheth dies, and David becomes king. And then the opposing generals and people that supported Saul were also defeated by David, and then so he's now sole ruler. He conquers Jerusalem, and he brings the Ark of the Covenant there. He has a huge commemoration festival, and basically you can really see that he's having a lot of blessing.
Yeah, and then he later wins battles against his many neighbors. So he's kind of like the underdog. No one really thinks he can do it, but somehow he always comes out on the top.
Yeah, so David's life had been characterized with beating the odds, no matter how high those odds were or how low they were, actually. But this success actually this is failure because.
Yeah. All right. So lust is David's downfall, and so it's an insatiable and irrational romantic desire for someone. This is often destructive force, as it also comes in the way of what your original beliefs are, and it impedes upon reasonable thought. So you're not always making the best decisions when you're going through this, and during consideration moral convictions. So you have to decide which it's a trade-off. So more lust or more you.
All right. So David is now king. He's got a lot of great blessing. He's very prosperous and wealthy. His kingdom is doing well. They're safe. But he decides that he sees a woman from his palace, Bathsheba. She's bathing on the rooftop across from his palace, and he immediately falls in love. And then so he asks one of his court officials, "Hey, can you find more about this woman? Who is she?" It turns out he's the friend of she's the wife of one of his friends, Uriah. But he doesn't seem to care, because he's gotten so much blessing at this point that he's like, yeah, God has been with me throughout all of this. He's allowed me to defeat much greater enemies. I'm sure if I do this, he won't really hate me for it because he already loves me. So here's what happens.
Oh, so he was, once a great leader, plays and a singer, but he was at a loss for words when he began to realize that he had become committing under lust, because he kind of lost control basically. And deep in his heart, he knew that what he was doing was wrong, but he persisted anyways. And he knew that even with God watching, he kept persisting into despair.
So basically, eventually Bathsheba becomes pregnant during her and David's secret relationship. And then so he does not want to let Uriah find out about this because he's one of his greatest friends. And he's like, oh man, I can't let him know that I did this to his wife. So basically, he arranges and executes a plan to keep him from finding out. So basically, during this time, they're at war with the Ammonites again. So he calls back Uriah from the front. He's like, you should rest for a while. You're my friend, so go to your house and rest. But this had been after they were having great feasts, so he was actually too drunk to get back to his house, and he eventually slept in an alleyway. And he was like, oh, so did you go back to your wife? Because what he was trying to do was, he was trying to get Uriah to, with his wife so that he would think that it's his son. But he doesn't do this. And then he sends him back to his house, like, oh, go back to your house and rest. He's like, I can't do that because my friends are all fighting on the front, so I shouldn't have better situations than they are right now. And so David's like, oh, he's not going to do it. And so he gets really desperate. He called his nephew, Joab, is the commander of the army. So he says, put Uriah in the front line on the next battle that you have. And so he does. And his intention is that Uriah is going to get killed when he's fighting. And he does. So Uriah's dead. He's lost one of his friends. He's lost control. And then Nathan, a prophet of God, enters before David. And he tells him, do you realize what you've just done? And then here's their conversation. And so God sent Nathan to David. Now this is all like verbatim from the Bible. He came into him and said,
so there were two men in one city, the one rich and the one poor. The rich man had very many sheep and the cattle, but the poor man had nothing but a small female lap. So it's contrasting these two people. And then which came at brought he cared for, and it grew up together with him and his sons. They would eat from the little food he had and drink from his cup and sleep in his arms. It became as a daughter to him. Later, a visitor came to the rich man, but he would not take any of his sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who would come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared the man who would come to him. So basically, it's trying to say, while the rich man had many sheep, they weren't each like individually given the same care as the poor man.
So what Nathan's doing here, that David doesn't realize this until the end. The rich man is David. He has many sheep, which is symbolizing many wives. And this person that has one small female lamb is Uriah, who has one wife, who's Bathsheba. And then so the rich man, he takes the one lamb and prepares it, takes it. So he's taking Uriah's one wife, and eventually the poor man, Uriah, suffers. So at this, David grew very angry against the man that Nathan's saying. He says to Nathan, as surely as God is living, the man who did this deserves to die. He should pay for the lamb 4 times over, because he did this and showed no compassion. And then Nathan said to David,
so you are the man. This is what Jehovah, the God of Israel, says. I myself anointed you as king over Israel, and I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I was willing to give you your master's house and put your master's wives in your arms, and I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And as if there were not enough, I was willing to do much for you. Why did you despise my word, my doing, and what is bad about my eyes? You struck down Uriah and with the sword. Then you took his wife as your wife, after you killed him by the sword of the Edomites. Now a sword will never depart from your own house, because you despise me by taking the wife of Uriah and as your wife. This is what Jehovah says, here I am.
Here's something against you, calamity from within your own house. So one thing that popped out to me is that this is kind of actually similar to what happens in Oedipus. Like when he comes, he's trying to find Liza's killer, And Teresa said, I say to you that you are the man you're looking for. It's kind of similar to when Nathan says, you are the man here. And the same thing happens when David takes Bathsheba as his wife, which is the wife of the guy that he just killed. But this story was actually written at least 300 years before Oedipus was ever written. And that I kind of find kind of interesting. Eventually, after David realizes this, he goes into despair.
So he fell before tragedy as his house of Israel as David's sin. So there was a lot of conflict and widespread as it had been before David, who took his power. So he dealt with this just like his crime, and faith was saved him.
All right, so basically what happens after this is David repents, which you can see him doing there. He truly feels sorry, and so God recognizes that he is truly sorry for what's done. But that still doesn't eliminate the consequences. So David's son, Absalom, rebels against him and tries to form his own kingdom. So basically, with his many wives, he had many children. And basically, the children of each of their wives would fight among each other because they want to be the successor. But Absalom is like, I don't really want to be the successor of my father because he's already sinned, he's already tainted his house. I want to form my own thing so that I'm separate from him. And so David eventually wins the war at great cost, and his son is killed, so he's very sad. And afterwards, a plague attacks Israel after David takes a census. So basically, what happened is, usually you take a census to find out how many people you have to go to war, but he was not supposed to be going to war because he was supposed to have peace. That's what he was commanded to do. But David had to repent once again after this. And so how David's life ends is he inaugurates his son Solomon, and he hopes that he's going to be a better king than he is. He hopes that he's not going to turn from God and disregard his word like he did. He has confidence that this will be the case. So that's why at the end of his life, they said that David's heart was complete with God. Despite all that he went through and all that he did, he still truly showed repentance for it. But that still didn't erase the fact that he had everything, but he gave it up for his just desire. And that's one thing that makes him a tragic hero. So we have the pictures. He's being anointed there. There he is as a harvest in Saul's court. He's defeating Goliath there. This is Saul here. 2 times David finds Saul in a vulnerable position. He could have killed him, but like we said, he let Saul live, and he was hoping that this mercy would change Saul's heart, but eventually it doesn't. But that's okay, because David becomes king afterwards. But then he sees Bathsheba, commits a sin, and then there he is repentant. So now he hopes that his son's going to be better than him. Well, listen, we learn.
All right, so we learned to not act rationally, so take your time with taking decisions and, take out the outcome of what might happen if you do this. So do whatever is expedient instead of what is right.
Do not do whatever is expedient instead of what's right.
So it is a valuable thing to have self-control and to not act, with lust and only looking for the short-term outcome. And know which desires and detrimental to you before you make that outcome or decision.
Yeah, so we can't always just purely based on our emotional judgment because it can be unreliable. So we should react by what we know, not by what we feel or by what we see. And so by what we know, we can bring in the knowledge that we have and make a better decision about how we should conduct ourselves.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider watching the rest of the videos in this series. Thank you, and goodbye.